Hi there, and welcome to How To with Ann Malum. When deciding to do this podcast, I really wanted to create something that could give people real tools on how to execute on certain things. So often we talk about things on such a macro scale that, yes, leaves people inspired, but with no real idea on what the steps are to make something in their own life happen. I challenge and encourage and probe my amazing guests to get granular and specific on their strategies, their mindset, their tactics, and their methodologies so that you can learn practical, actionable steps to best optimize your confidence, career, health, and wealth. What's up, everybody? I am Ann Malum, and welcome to the podcast. I have one goal here, and it is to help you achieve ultimate optimization in your career, health, and wealth. Every single guest that I bring on has a proven track record of success in these areas, and we dive into tips, advice, and real-life examples on how you can do it too. Today, we are fortunate to have Ryerson with us. He is an international speaker, mindset and business coach, host of Let's Go Win podcast, and best-selling author of Let's Go Win, The Keys to Living Your Best Life, and Champions Daily Playbook. He helps high-performing leaders define and execute their individual leadership styles in order to grow the impact and profits of their businesses. His passion is to help others succeed at work, at home, and in life by offering simple tools that provide a work-life balance. Welcome, JM. Thank you for being here.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
JM, why don't you tell folks a little bit about you, your history, how you got to where you are today, and anything else you want to add in the mix?
Sure. So Let's Go Win I call it my legacy company. It's the fourth company that I've been fortunate enough to build. And I love what Let's Go Win stands for. The reason I wake up every single day is to inspire people to live their best lives. That's legitimately why Let's Go Win was started. Now, it started because I wrote a book for my two kids. I have 16 and 13-year-old sons. Great. And at the time, I wanted them to not skin their knees as many times as I did. So having somewhat of a roadmap and a not boring read that's like super, in 3 or so hours, you can finish the book and say, oh, cool, I can go apply this and my life gets marketably better. So that was the idea. Now, the lady I was working with said, man, you're selfish. And I said, I don't think I'm selfish. What are you talking about? She said, look, if you only share this with 2 human beings, you're selfish. Cool, lesson learned, we publish. And it just takes me on this awesome journey where the next client that I have is, hey, can you coach this kid to lose weight? And I was like, yeah, sure, I could do that. And so we helped this gentleman lose like 80 pounds over about 6 months, which is a little bit faster than honestly I probably wanted to do, but he really dove in on this. And then somebody's like, hey, can you help this PGA golfer? He's missed 12 straight cuts. And I was like, yeah, we could do that. And so we helped him make 4 out of the next 5 and then start really enjoying golf and playing well again. And so I just love Let's Go Win. It's what I'm passionate about. Prior to that, my previous professional life, I built 3 companies in the financial service world. I know nothing about finances, so please don't ask. I was good at building teams, culture, and performance. And so I just kind of wrapped all that up into Let's Go Win because I think we can learn so many lessons from previous mistakes, mine being aplenty. And so it's like, hey, I learned this mistake. Here's how you can maybe avoid that. And so on a daily basis, I get to work with, executives or athletes on putting together, some daily routines and habits to support what they're doing so that they can see success. And so every day I get to wake up and work with people to live their best life. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I have a ton of questions, but I first want to comment on something that I'm sure sticks out to people when you're like, I don't know anything. Don't ask me about financial advice. I feel the exact same way. So I've built a couple of companies as well. I'm on my 3rd one now, and really around the health, fitness, and wellness space. And people will be like, oh my God, Ann, my back, my this, my that. And I'm like, I'm not a trainer. I understand how to do the same thing you did, which I understand brand, I understand community, I understand structure, I understand team, and I sort of know the building blocks to make something happen. And sounds like you're the same. you can apply that to any sort of company or sector. I just love the wellness space and fitness space because I love improving people's lives. And that's where I choose to put those talents and energies. And it's a really great lesson for people out there because we think we have to be experts like in that thing. And building companies, frankly, is really about what you said, team, culture, and performance.
Yeah, isn't it freeing when you get clear on, hey, I'm good at this, but I suck at this. And so I'm going to focus on the things I'm really good at and I enjoy. I didn't feel that way early in my career, right? I wanted to look the way, I wanted to sound a certain way. And that's why this sign over my right shoulder, I guess it would be, is show up as you. The minute I figured out like, hey, JM, you as a dude, you're pretty cool. Like, just go be you. But if you're trying to look a certain way, trying to sound a certain way, you're not someone I want to be around. That's not authentic. And when I embrace that and figured out, hey, I love leadership, I love performance, I love mindset. Like, again, the other sign over my shoulder, mindset matters. Like, these are the things I'm passionate about. And so that's what I'm going to work on. And you know what? I'm pretty decent at it. I'm not very good at doing a P&L or if you're dealing with taxes, that's not my thing. I'm not good at that. But when it comes to mindset and leadership, I think I have a couple things to offer.
Yeah. And you could say you're not good at that, but you know that's part of the business. So you have to find people who are good and you can bring in and you trust and you can ask questions to. And I find that gets in people's way too when people want to start and they're like, I don't know about this. I'm like, there's not one entrepreneur out there who knows everything. Like, same, I'm not a big finance spreadsheet. I understand them macro big level, but you asked me to go build a financial model and you're going to be waiting till 2026. Like, it's just not how my brain is wired. And knowing I need someone else in there. And one of the current books I'm reading in this Harvard Business Review speaks to what you're talking about, JM, which is a lot of people don't get granular enough of knowing what they're really good at, the environment they're going to be successful in, and then what they're not good at and the environment they're not going to be successful in. I'm sure you hear people all the time be like, oh my God, I want to work in a startup. And you're like, why? And it's the idea of the startup, the sexy, whatever you might see on TV and the cool office space and the kombucha and all these things. But that's an environment that changes a lot, that you've got to like pivoting and you need to be bringing ideas when things change. And if you're someone who likes structure, certainty, predictability, that's not the environment for you. You're probably going to fail in that environment. And it's one thing I try to challenge people a lot on is understanding those things. Knowing what you're not good at is really important. It's just as knowing what you are good at.
Yeah, and there's a fascinating book that recently came out by Patrick Lencioni, who's one of my favorite authors, right? The Advantage is a great read that he wrote, but his most recent work is called The 6 Types of Working Genius. And the whole idea is, look, there's 6 areas that really are required in a team to perform. And 2 of them is like your superpower. You're really good at it. It fills your bucket. It energizes you. 2 of them you're pretty decent at, but it doesn't really do much for you. And 2 you could be great at, but it just drains you. And when he put this book together, I'm reading it and I'm like, wow, I wish I knew this 20 years ago. And I still do work today where I'm like, oh man, that drains me. Organizing things, it drains me, right? Yeah. I like to come up with an idea, get people rallied around behind it, and let's go. But if you want it organized and structured, and nope, sorry, that's where, bring my wife in. She's type A. She's really good at that. And that's a skill set of hers. She enjoys that. Not for me. So anyway, it is a fascinating subject and I am passionate about it. And I just think I got to plug Lencioni because his work is really, really cool. Yep. And it's an easy read.
Yeah. And guys, if anybody's listening, one, you're already doing some of the work because you're listening to podcasts. And I see like books, podcasts. I put an hour of content in my ears, in my eyes, in my brain every single day. And learning these things continues to help you understand yourself and how you are going to be successful. And, a lot of the stuff we learn in school isn't about any of these things. And so we have to do our own work. One of the things that I know you talk a lot about, and I want to get into some of the tips, in your book, so you can give a little of our listeners some of the things that you teach methodology. But one of the things I know you work on is limiting beliefs. Can you talk a little bit about that with us?
1,000%. Yes.
Go for it.
In terms of limiting beliefs, it's so interesting how many of them we have if we stop and just listen to ourselves. For instance, I'm shy, I'm skinny, I'm fat, I'm this, I'm that. And they're all beliefs that, where did that come from? Right? So many things have been passed down generationally and not always positive. For me, it started, money was one of those things that I brought a limiting belief to. And I remember the first time I made over 7 figures in a year, you would think you would be celebrating. Like, that's that mark. And I was like 27 at the time. Like, you should be fired up. You can go do some amazing things in the world. I felt horrible. I felt like I am a fraud. I'm now this pretty person that was what my dad used to say. That's for the pretty people. That's for these people. And what I realized is that was just his dad teaching him limiting beliefs around money that his dad had taught. So like 3 generations deep have now come down to me, and it's been ingrained in my head that the people that drive this car over here are somehow different and bad, when it's just, money is just a thing. It's just an object. And so it was like, why do I think this way? That was the first question I asked, is why do you think that way? And then
JM, sorry to cut you off. We have similar, my mother is the same way about when I started to create my own wealth. She sort of continued to aggressively and passive aggressively sort of remind me that, like, you're not grounded. That's not the kind of people we are. And that I was sort of, it was bad to want so much or to have so much. And so you have this association you have to get over of, wait a minute, like, where is that an insecurity that my mother has about her own view of money, and she's projecting that on me? But it takes growing up and learning that to realize those things.
Yeah, and it's a powerful lesson that we have to go through at some point. And again, that's one example. Other people, they don't feel they should succeed because something they came from. But money is a common one, that they came from a humble place or humble beginnings, and somehow money is going to be bad. It's not bad. It's just it's an object. What you do with this, you can go cure some amazing, people that are homeless, or maybe somebody that's hungry, or there's so many amazing things you can do with this. Why we put so much around this object, or why we choose to say, I can only do this much. So the first question, Anne, that I always ask people is just, why do you think that way? Where did that come from? Just sit on that for a minute and figure out, oh, wait a minute. These were things that maybe my mom or my dad or my grandparents said. Well, is that true? Or is that just their experience? Okay, and then you kind of dive on that. Is this serving me? This attitude of I'm only X, is that serving me? Is that serving other people? Because if it's not, maybe we can change it. And so it is interesting. The moment you open Pandora's box and you're like, oh, I overcame the self-limiting belief that, by the way, wasn't even mine. These were hard wires put into me at such a young age. Now what? Now what can I do? And now the whole world is like, oh, you can do anything. If you can believe it, and if you can dream it, you can actually go achieve it. But it does start with the mindset. You have to actually believe in yourself. And I know that's a challenge for people sometimes, but just ask the question of why, and is it serving you? And then boom, you can start moving forward.
One of my favorite Tony Robbins quotes, I don't know if you're a Tony Robbins fan, but I am, when he says, the problem with your beliefs is you believe them. And that is exactly what they are, is we've created an identity around them. So one of the things that I started doing years ago, when people say the phrase, that's just not who I am, I'm like, what if you just added the right now at the end of that? That's not who I am right now. Like drinking or whatever. Because when you say that's not who I am, it pigeonholes you into that's who you always have to be. And the research and reading I've done are, amygdala hangs on to our belief systems. It's where the fight or flight lives. So it wants to protect this identity that you've made sense of the world and yourself. And so when someone comes along and challenges those beliefs, your brain is like, reject, reject, reject. We've survived 30, 40, 50 years with this belief system. If you start to question this, then what else isn't true? Then what else do we have to question? And to your point, it's being aware of those things and not letting our belief systems hold us prisoners to what our capabilities are, because that can happen too, JM. And I see people use their belief systems as a crutch. And you need to not want that crutch, because if you want the excuse, it's there for you. If you want the, oh, I'm too busy, I can't, oh, I can't because I have 2 kids, I need to be responsible, I don't have time for that. Like, those excuses are deep within anybody's pockets. They might be different excuses, but you have to decide if you actually want to change your belief system or not, or if you want to hang on to them. And I think that's a really important question to start with folks, because a lot of people don't want to let go of them because it is the excuse that allows them to stay in the same place that they're in.
It's so true. And I just one last part of this. Our bodies listen to what we say. And so we're energetic beings. When you say something, let's say, I don't know, I'm ugly. Let's just say somebody were to say that. Well, you're not, unless A, you believe that, because you're really not. If you believe it, yes, you are. You'll be an ugly being. You'll be an ugly soul. But your body listens to this. Like, when you say that, it's going to transform and work that way. If you just change your wording and just catch yourself to say, I'm amazing. You are. I'm beautiful. You are. I'm strong. You are. All of these things, like, you verbalize it, and as an energetic being, you're going to go to that. So when you just start to catch yourself say these beliefs, just stop and say, what's the opposite of that? And just, because you will maybe not, your subconscious maybe not right away. That takes some time. That takes some affirmations. That takes some practice. If you start verbalizing it, your body wants to follow through. Your energy wants to follow through on whatever you say, both good and bad, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that's a great segue into getting a little bit deeper into your methodology. So let's just say, again, folks might be listening and they have their own places where they might feel stuck. Maybe it's around their career, their relationships, their health, bad habits, eating, working out, whatever it is. What's your first step with people? Even in the book, Let's Go Win, where do you start with folks? Like, what's step one, day one?
Yeah, getting clarity on exactly what you want. And I know you've heard it. Everybody's heard that. But if you're not clear, like the GPS is the best analogy I can use. If you're not clear on where you're going, if you just say to the GPS, I want to go to, again, I'm from Great Falls, Montana. I want to go to Great Falls. Okay, cool. Where? Right? It needs to know exactly where to go. So what do you want? I want to, I don't know. I want to be pain-free and limber. Okay, cool. What's the next step? I'm going to work on, like, I had shoulder. I was supposed to have a shoulder replacement. I chose not to because I'm 44, man. It's way too early for that. So I decided to get some stem cells, some PRP, and I'm working through that so I can be pain-free. But I have to get clear on what the steps are. Why do I want that? Why is that important? Well, it's important because I have young boys that still play sports and I want to be active. So having a shoulder that doesn't work for me. And so it's just getting clarity around what do you want to do. Now, one of the biggest challenges is whatever fear is maybe getting in your way, whatever self-limiting belief. So it takes courage to start to do some of these things. And one of the things I say in the book is courage is like a muscle. It gets stronger the more you use it. So whatever fear you have, there's a quick 3R thing that I teach all the time. The first R is just recognize that fear. Okay. That's the first R, is recognize. Now you're going to write that down. That's not an R. That's a W for those that have like, that's another R. I'm like, no, it's a W, but write it down. Okay. Now I want you to release it. So tear up that fear, chew it, burn it. I really don't care. Destroy the fear. And now the third R is to react in opposition. And that's the part of the courage. So you recognize the fear, you release it, and you react in opposition. Whatever you want is on the other side of fear. We've seen that quote before, and I find it to be absolutely true. So just recognize whatever that is, and then just react in opposition. And that is the first start of your courage muscle building.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about the muscle. I talk about that also as it relates to rejection, and it's remembering sometimes we can get so in our own heads and we just sort of personalize everything. And rejection is the same. You have to practice it. Guys, one, nobody likes rejection. So when you say you don't like rejection, I don't know anybody who does. So it's not a personal, rejection is not personally attacking you. And the only way you're going to get good at it is if you practice it. Like whether it's asking out the girl that like, you're not sure she's going to say yes, go have dinner by yourself and sit there and like deal with the emotions of you think people looking at you and being like, oh, that person doesn't have any friends or doesn't have a boyfriend or a wife or a girlfriend, whatever that is, feel all of those things. And once you do it again and again, or have people tell you no, like it all of a sudden doesn't paralyze you when you get used to it. It's like going to the gym. The first day is hard. Day 90 is not hard because you're used to it. So I think that that's all those emotions that everybody is fearful of. It's their muscles and they need to be, you need to work them out just like when you're working out your physical body.
Well, what's so interesting too, Anne, is you're right. Nobody wants to get rejected. But I will tell you one thing. If you want to change rejection or feedback is what I call it, just say thank you. When people tell me like, let's say you suck at this. Okay, cool. Can you tell me why? And they say, because I don't like your face. All right, thank you. I can't change it, but at least I know why it bothers you. And once I say thank you, it's funny how much power you take away from this rejection. Because when people are like, I'm rejecting you, that's to a degree them showing some dominance over you. If you just say, hey, thank you very much, it takes away so much power and it actually gives you strength and power to say, that's just one small thing. And those of us that were athletes, you get used to it, right? You get beaten so many times and you get rejected so many times that you learn to just say, okay, thank you. That's just part of the process. But it applies to all areas of our life. So it's just funny whenever I get rejected, and in this world of influencer or podcasting or writing, you're going to get told how horrible you are often. And I told my wife and my kids early, I said, look, the moment people really start saying your dad is awful, that's when I know I'm doing some really positive things, because a guarantee in life is you're never going to make everybody happy. So just thank them for spending the time to actually give you some feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because that's not the reaction that people are trying to get out of you. So you actually gain some of the control back when it's like, thank you for your feedback. People are trying to, whether it's, anonymous accounts on Instagram or say they're trying to fire you up. They're trying to get you defensive. They're trying to be argumentative. And so it's a really great diffuser to take some of the power back. And I like the trick thing, saying thank you. And the other thing is people are going to judge you regardless of what you do. They judge you when you're not trying, and then they judge you for trying. So, and that's the same thing that, again, I've learned through resilience of going through that multiple times. In the beginning, I remember when starting back on my feet, there were a lot of comments out there that like, who's this white girl, trying to, use Black people to get famous. And I remember feeling like, can someone find me the phone number of this? Like, I just wanted to call them and be like, that's not what I'm doing. I can't believe you would say that. And then, over time, obviously you realize everybody has something to say about what you're doing, what they're not doing. And 99 times out of 100, it's not about you. It's again, somebody's own, whether insecurity, emotional trauma, something, and it's just easier to direct that, at other people. So, okay, cool. So first things first, you get clear on what people want, and then you get clear on the why. Have you ever found, JM, when someone's talking about the why, that like they really actually don't want it after they've layered it on, that maybe it's a societal pressure, a familial pressure, something that somebody else has told them, or they've just picked something out of default?
All the time. And I'll use the first client I ever had as an example. He walked through my door because his dad had asked me to help him lose weight. And I said, okay, so I'll leave his name out, but we'll call him Seth. I don't know. It's not his name. So Seth, what are you looking for out of this? And he starts talking and talking and talking. And what he really wanted was he wanted to feel good about himself. He wanted to succeed in his career. And because of this weight, he felt like this was a hindrance. I was like, okay, is this something that if you, let's say we had lost some of this, would you feel more confident? He says, I think I would. Okay, cool. So now we get the actual why, because it wasn't health related for him. He didn't feel unhealthy. It was more of a mental thing. And so once we figured out like, hey, this is your why, now we can go to it. But to your question of asking people, why do you want that? And then them figuring out like, oh, shoot, that was actually for mom or dad or husband or wife or whatever pressure you may have. Yeah, that's actually not something I enjoy. And you see it in careers all the time. I'm not telling people to just bounce from their career because they had a bad day at work. I'm not saying that. However, if on a daily basis you come home and you're saying, my job sucks, this is miserable. Life's not meant to be that way. It's really not. It's all a choice. And so if you are choosing to be miserable, you can also choose to be happy. It's just literally making a change. Now, the biggest problem I had, Anne, is I used to try to change people. That never works. I've never had somebody be like, yes, I like change. I want to change. But people love to be upgraded. And here's my best example. If you were to hold up your cell phone to a client, and you say, have you upgraded your phone recently? Within 2 years, most people have done this. So they actually like the idea of an upgrade. Well, you're changing phones, but you like it because it's an upgrade. It's a marketing genius. But the truth is that's what everybody wants. We want to be upgraded. I've never been upgraded on an airline. They're like, JM, we're going to put you in first class. I've never been like, no, you're not going to upgrade me to first class. Of course I'm going to say yes. That's awesome. Well, guess what? That's the same idea. Is we're just going to upgrade your job, your relationship, your health, whatever you're doing. It is actually a change. But if you just change that word to upgrade, people are like, oh yeah, that sounds great. I want to do that.
Great trick. Change sounds so scary and so uncertain, but upgrade doesn't. Upgrade sounds like like, why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you say that? So that's great. So I just want to try to make sure. So again, we're talking about methodology. So first things first, getting clear on your why and dialing down. So don't just say, I want to lose weight. You've got to figure out those reasons why and try to articulate that. And guys, I've been there too. For those listening, we've all sort of been like, oh yeah, I want this thing, but really we don't want it. And then we can release it and we can stop feeling badly about the idea that we're not working toward something. So Mark Manson speaks to this stuff all the time when he used to want to be a rock star. And he's like, I didn't want to be a rock star. I like the idea of being a rock star, but I didn't want to schlep around all the gear. I didn't want to go play at late night bars and be out till 3 a.m. I didn't want to do any of the process to actually get there. I just sort of wanted the corner office without putting the 8 years of work to get there. So it can be a really freeing exercise to get clear on what it is you want, or are you just saying you want that? Because those are the motivating things that are going to, when Sunday morning comes around and you're deciding, am I going for a 14-mile run today to train for this marathon, or am I not? And if you don't have a valid reason for why you actually want to do the marathon, you're not going to go run.
Yeah. And, give yourself some grace on it too. That's okay, right? It's like,
right.
I was the same way. That's why I did internships in college, my summers, because I was going to be an attorney. I knew it, man. I took the LSATs. I'm going. And then I did an internship and I was like, oh, this would be awful. This is not what I want to be at all. For me, I'm not saying that's a bad profession. For me, I wanted to be on ESPN and sportscasting. So I think it was my sophomore year of college. I do an internship and I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't make it a 90 days. This is awful. And so I realized that wasn't for me. So we don't know it. So that's, hey, try it out, ask. And I know we're working on the methodology, but finding those people that have done these things and really ask some clarifying questions to understand what that all took, because you're so right. And we see this this perfect thing and how it looks once you hit this. I see it with athletes that I work with all the time. People are like, oh, they have these endorsement deals and blah, blah, blah. Look, it's hard work. They put in crazy amounts of work. There's so much sacrifice, compromise, social. It gets absolutely sometimes destroyed. And people don't see all that. They just see all the accolades. Well, there's a lot more to it as well.
Yeah, and it can. I agree. Like, it's really freeing. Changing our minds about something, and again, it goes back to the identity piece, JM. Once we've sort of locked into this is who I am, we sort of like, okay, well, this is who I'm going to be for the next 20 years. And that's why I love this is who I am right now. I'm not that person right now. It allows for flexibility. I mean, the best example I can give that people might relate to, I've been engaged twice and I didn't go through with either one of them because one, in my mind, an engagement period is just that. It's the deciding point of if you're going to go through with it. And I wasn't afraid to change my mind and say, this isn't right for me. And we're talking about the rest of my life and I'm not going to make that commitment. If I think that this isn't going to last forever, I can't hold up my end of the bargain. And sure, people talk, people judge, oh, another failed engagement. You can phrase it however you want. I look at it as a very successful decision and a brave decision, knowing the scrutiny and the criticism and the gossip that happens with something like that. But it's my life. I'm not going to make a decision so that everybody else can feel comfortable with it. Are you kidding me?
That's so powerful. You chose not to. And by the way, that's okay. All these things that we're supposed to do, it's so fascinating. I don't know who created these rules that you're supposed to do X, Y, or Z. Look, you chose not to. That's cool. And to your point, here's what's so interesting. I'm not the same person I was at 8, 18, 28, 38, or I will be at 48. We evolve, we change, perspectives change. And so to think that I'm going to be X and this is how my story ends, like this is just a chapter in my book right now. This is who I am. And if I choose to be, I don't know, an accountant, which I highly unlikely, but let's just say I wanted to be an accountant 5 years from now. Cool, man. Go pursue that and do your very best to do that. And that's okay. Just being okay with who you are and truly being able to be vulnerable like that. It's such a freeing feeling.
Yeah. And, life is hardly linear. And I think sometimes we try to force it to be so, to feel like, okay, I'm 35, I need to have kids and be married. I'm this, my career needs to be here. My wealth needs to be here. And it goes back to just the beginning stages of the methodology here is the why, right? Money might not be important to you. So you don't need to bend over, at least not as important as somebody else. You might not want to make millions of dollars. That's okay. You might not want to have a 6-pack, and just owning those decisions. And I think when you can really step into that identity of who you are in that moment in time, like the stress just disappears. It dissipates because you're not trying so hard to keep up with something that you don't want anyway. And I just found that for myself of when I've been ready to move on or let go of. Same with you when you've sold your companies, like, great, it's time to move on. And I've done that a couple of times as well, where people are like, why are you doing this? And it's sort of because I get a lot of joy and happiness out of growth, and I could stay with this organization or company and keep building and keep growing it. But deep down for myself, knowing that that's not what's going to make me happiest. And to your point, JM, I want to look back on my life and be like, I lived 25 lives in my one life because I constantly was like, what's next? What if I did this? What if I experienced this? And there's something I think really amazing and brave about just living your life in that way too. And when I see people change their mind or get divorced or leave a job or go back to school, it just makes me really happy because I know that they're doing what your left sign says, which is showing up as themselves, even though no one else probably understands it.
Yeah. And, that's the beauty of life, right? My parents, they worked for the same company for, 35. My mom was a teacher for 39 years. And there's beauty in that because she found her passion. She was one of those blessed human beings that she loved every day of going to work. And cool. Mm-hmm. That is amazing. There's nothing fills my bucket more than when you talk to somebody that's like, I love what I do. I get fulfilled by what I do. We're not on earth this long. We may as well be really happy. So it's interesting. And as I work with clients, because I changed my values not long ago, because it was courage, fun, transcend. And that made sense to me. But what I learned as I coach clients, I was like, everybody wants three things. They want to be happy, they want to be healthy, and they want to be wealthy. And when I say wealth, it's not just financially at all. I'm talking in your spiritual life, in your health life, in your relationships. And so when I found that, I was like, oh, this is way easier to explain because it's what we all really want. We want to be happy, healthy, and wealthy. It's like everybody's satisfied or, pleased if they're find those things.
Yeah. And same, like, again, some Tony Robbins stuff. When I went to his 6-day event, the Date with Destiny, and one of the exercises you do is you go through what your values and needs are. And we all have, at least his, viewpoint, which I buy into actually, is we all have the same sort of needs. The prioritization of those needs are different for each individual. So you take security, right? There's a lot of people out there who value security and that stays at the top. There's nothing wrong with that. The trick is knowing your needs, where security for me is more toward the bottom. One, I feel like I have enough of it in my life. And two, knowing just how I've chosen to live my life, personal growth is really at the top. So I can't really have a lot of personal growth if I'm hanging on to so much security. There is no wrong answer with any of that stuff. And I feel like people would be a lot happier with themselves if they just like, this is what my priorities are. They don't have to be yours, and stop trying to make our priorities match what we think they're supposed to be or what everybody else's is.
Yeah, it's so true. Just some clarifying questions will get you there. It's so true. Such a good point.
So cool. So let's go through these 5 questions that everybody gets asked on the podcast, because I'm sure there'll be some additional conversation around each one, and they won't be short answers. But first one sounds simple, but be curious what your thoughts are. How do you for yourself, JM, define success?
For me, it's really simple. I just being happy. It's when I look at my kids, I was talking to my son. He's a very good tennis player. And he was struggling, not succeeding to the level that he wanted to. And I asked him, I was like, why did you start playing tennis? Well, because I like it. I loved it. It's fun. Said, are you having fun now? No, it sucks. I didn't win my match. I'm like, it's not why you started. And what's fascinating, that's my 16-year-old. The same thing worked with the golfer I talked about earlier. Once they got back to the love, they started performing well again. So for me, success is just being happy.
Great. And has that changed for you throughout the years of what happiness means to you?
Yeah, for sure. I remember in my early 20s, I got caught up in the race of climbing the ladder and X amount, and I would have deemed that more successful then. And what's fascinating is as I let go of that, more came too, because it wasn't my focus, but rather bringing value, right? One of the things I always say on stage is, I'm going to give you 100%. And it may be awesome in your eyes. It may be horrible in your eyes, but it's 100% me. And I'm with you with right now. It's all I got. And to me, that being truly present, that is another thing in my life that's just so important, is just being in this moment, every single moment, because that's all we have.
Yeah, and I think that comes with as we get older and experience, you learn that, and going through enough, whether times or moments where you're maybe not that case, or we're focused on sort of what's next, or at home with our families and then looking at our phone for work stuff. But yeah, I have found that as I've gotten older, just, when I'm with people that I love, my phone does not get the attention. Okay, great. So tell us one formative moment in your life that shaped you to who you are today. I'm sure there are plenty, but if you have to pick one.
I'm going to pick my third knee surgery because it derailed my athletic career. You weren't going to convince me I wasn't going to play in the NBA. There was no way. I just was. And after the third one, because I blew up both my ACL and meniscus, I had to look in the mirror and say, okay, this isn't looking like that. But the reason it ended up being such an important thing in my life is I ended up going to study abroad. And when you live away from your family thousands of miles and you're in a country where, yes, they speak English, but it's not their first language, and you just learn so much about who you are, what do you want, and where are you going. And that time I studied in the Netherlands and I read voraciously. I mean, I was on trains all the time and reading. So that moment, although in the time it was like awful in my head, it ended up being the best moments that could have ever happened. And we see that so often in life. Something tragic or horrible ends up being this amazing blessing. And that's what my third knee surgery was.
Yeah. And JM, in giving you some additional credit, you chose to see it that way. And that's an empowering lesson for all of us. So if it's really, I broke my leg a few years ago. And, again, that's like, oh, there's an excuse that goes in the bucket there if I want it, right? For the rest of my life, oh, I can't because I broke my leg, this or that. But when you choose to see these moments that look like, mistake's the wrong word, but may pivot your life in a way you weren't expecting, you can either create a sad story around it, or you can look for the optimism in it and see what else is out there for you. So yeah, life's all about perspective, isn't it? Okay, so what do you think? This is I think this is a question that people have very different answers to, but what do you think causes people to make real change in their life?
Typically it's pain, but you know what I'm going to say is perspective.
Okay.
I don't like this about the human beings as a whole. It requires us this perspective to really wake up and be shook. And the best example I'll give for the country is when 9/11 happened. That's the last time our country was really united. Like we were all rowing the boat in the same direction. And I was hoping Corona would do the same thing, and it didn't. It just kept pulling us apart more and more, pointing the fingers, and we've forgotten that we're all, at least in the U.S., we're trying to win for the U.S. So, like for instance, my dad passed away in March of this year, and it sucked, man. Thank you, but the level of perspective that I have gained and how much more I value every single day, even more than I did before, because that was my guy. I mean, this is my hero, my dad, and so many things, one of my best friends, and yet he's gone. So I want to really value and live in the moment and be the best dad, best husband, best employee and employer, whatever hat you're wearing. But I forgot that at certain points, and you kind of start coasting. So I think perspective is really what makes people move.
And can you force perspective on yourself?
Interesting question. I don't want to make this a long one. I think through, as you say, with podcasts, books, for me, journaling, that's how I do stay somewhat perspective. But the ones that shake you to the core, I don't know.
Yeah.
This one did. And I don't want to lose this feeling. And I'm sure at some point it'll start to wear off. But I don't know. That's such a fascinating question, Anne. I like that one.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks for giving us something to think about. Okay, two more. What is the one thing people can do today after listening to our conversation to start living a more optimized life?
I would ask yourselves questions. People are so afraid of journaling. It's so interesting to me because they're like, I don't journal. I struggle with journaling. You're just writing. You're literally taking pen to paper and you just write. There's no right or wrong reason. And What's amazing is the paper's never been like, JM, you are brilliant, or JM, you're an idiot. It doesn't say any of that. It just takes the pen onto the paper. So for me, I think for people to really get clarity and start living their best life, that's what I would do, is just write. Just brain dump it all out, and then start to get clarity around, okay, what am I doing? Am I really living my best life? And if not, why? Is it a relationship that's in a way? Is it my health? Is it, there's some core tenets that get in the way. So If I'm not, let's go change it. But I don't think you can see it without getting clear first.
Yeah, and thoughts can be fleeting, right? You can easily change them, but when you're forced to put them down on paper and you reread them, especially if you do it long enough and you sort of see a theme there, maybe forces you to pay attention a little bit more, that like, oh, this is where my thoughts are gravitating to, and they were doing that last week and the week before. Maybe there's something here.
And I keep something next to me when I sleep, because when I wake up from a dream, I think a lot of things are being said to us, and it's like, write about it. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's crazy. That's okay. It's just a thought.
Totally. Maybe the reason why people don't want to write it down is because of exactly that. Then they have to look at it and it's staring in their face. But to your point, it's only you and you're going to see the piece of paper and you get to decide what you do with it. So it can be a really great tool for accountability as well. All right, last question. What are right now, because again, I know this might change just based on different phases we're on life, but right now, what are the non-negotiables in your life that have contributed to your success and happiness?
So my non-negotiables are not compromising on your values. And here's what I would say to that. If you truly value respect, for instance, that's one of mine. Don't compromise on that just because someone can help you get there, or, they can help you in some way. Look, you respect yourself and others will respect you as well. So it's this whole idea of compromising your values, your true core values. And that's one of the things I coach a lot on, is taking that mask off, is because people have core values. They're clear on it and they want to fit in. So they kind of, all right, I'll do this. And then they want to fit in. So then they start to look that, don't do that. Just be that beautiful self that you are. Let it be. And it's really freeing. So I'm going to say respect is the example I'll give, but whatever your core values are, don't compromise on them. It's not worth it. It's a lot of work. It's just so much easier to just be you, and you know who that is, and just let that out and flourish.
And has that core value for you been consistent throughout the majority of your life, or can you remember a time when that was different?
Oh yeah, it was not. My first company and a half, I talk about this frequently, is I was a suit and tie guy, buttoned up, and I thought I had to sound a certain way. And look, if you wear a suit and tie, cool, that's you. I'm a kid from Montana. I'm jeans and tee, and that's me, and I'm comfortable. But I didn't embrace that until my second company. There was this moment, and once that moment happened, I could never look back. I could never go back and try to be something that I wasn't. And the moment was, my wife and I were separated for almost a year, and I was losing my family, which, if you ask me why, it is those two kids and that woman. They are amazing, but I lost sight of that. And once I was able to repair that and went through that, again, one of those things that looks like a setback, but is actually the best thing that could have ever happened. Once I started just being me again, it was like, holy cow, all that energy that went towards looking a certain way or that's a lot of energy. It takes no energy to just be me, like zero. It's just, this is the way I wake up. This is who it is. And so, yeah, it was a pretty impactful moment. And I really pray that I never forget that lesson, because it's so much easier and it's way more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And it's all these things, when you hear them in theory, they always sound, so simple to us, but it's when life, whether it gets harder, we as humans, we just overcomplicate them. But, a big part of getting clear is just getting rid of the noise. Is this my belief? Where did this come from? Is this, do I enjoy this? What are my values? And protecting those things once you have clarity on them. And why do I want to do this? Is it my idea? Because it is really noisy out there. And there's a lot of people think about when we grew up, JM, there was sort of limited information, right? It was like through the TV, through the newspaper, and like that's all we got. And now we've overcorrected, and there's just too much information everywhere we look. Advertisements on social media, the algorithms are so good, convincing us we need this to do this. As I've become more successful over the years, Everybody wants to tell me what I should do with my money, the kind of person I should be, where I should be spending time, what I should be wearing. And it's just like, there's a lot of things to drown out there. And if you don't have clarity on who you are and what your values are, it's really easy to get swayed in any of those directions.
And it is fascinating. It is one of those challenges with so much information at our hands that we do lose sight of who we are at times. And it's the core is there. You just have to be willing to look.
Yeah, one of my friends is going to do a silent meditation retreat, and I just find it so admirable because talk about way to clear out the noise. Again, everyday conversations, work, social media, on the street, whatever. Like you're just sort of playing tennis a little bit with like, oh, I'm going to receive that, and I'm going to return that, and it's a lot of effort out there. So I think there's something to the silence. And I meant to say this earlier when you were talking about basketball, but I was not going to go play in the NBA, but I have a killer jump shot, and I'm a very good contender in horse. So if we are in the same place in the Midwest, if your ACL and your knees can handle it, I will challenge you to a game of horse.
And accepted. I'll come see you. You come see me. We can do it. Boca. I can come to New York. I think you're at, or we can go to North Dakota, Montana, wherever you want. And I love horse. It's fun.
Yeah. My nephews was like, I don't understand how Anna always wins. She's like 40-some years old. Like, how is this possible? But anyway, last thing here, JM, tell us where people can find you, where they can buy your books. What's the best way to follow you and get in touch?
Thank you. Let's Go Win. Let'sGoWin.com. Let's Go Win podcast. Everything's Let's Go Win. If you look it up, it's there. You know what I would say? If you enjoyed even a little bit of this is what my podcast, and I know, Ann, we're getting you scheduled, or at least I hope you're scheduled soon because you're going to be an amazing guest. I already know that. But yeah, I just check it out. Let's Go Win 365 on any social media platform. I love to genuinely connect with human beings. So I appreciate that. And thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Yes, well, you're more than welcome, and we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to shed some light on some really important things today. So thanks for being here, Jan.